Hey, how are you guys? It's Francis coming back at you. Yes, indeed. It's kind of a reset sniper. So I'm going to push it through on the reset sniper. But it also overlaps, like most of our things, the three circles: crypto, market sniper, reset sniper. Anyway, it's Stanley Druckenmiller. I've watched a couple of his talks. This is Bloomberg. You know what you get with Bloomberg. It's a control structure media platform. Anyway, it was really interesting watching his comments. I think you should watch the whole thing if you're interested in markets and how they're going to play out. Managed money very successfully. We used to be with George Soros, the Quantum Fund, span out of that, as did Jim Rogers as well. Interesting people managing their own money nowadays, probably, billionaires, quite possibly many times over. Close friend to Johan Rupert, a South African entrepreneur who took over from Anton Rupert, his father, that had the Rothmans and all this, the tobacco brands, etc. in South Africa, diversified into luxury goods, made an absolute fortune, great investor. So it's always interesting to hear him. In fact, he references his relationship with Johan. Anyway, I want two key points that I'm going to get that I shared with my community that I thought, well, what the hell, we can put this out to the YouTube channel as well. In terms of our scenario casting for Great Reset, there's two interesting points that he brings up. I want you to listen to this one. Some of these things you may have heard from me before already, and I find it validating when a man of this standing, he's a very high standing, very capable, well thought of money manager of great note. Let's hear what he says. And remember, he's talking to control structure media with their square-jawed, good looks type characters and smarmy charm, but very pro the watermelon, communism, and many other things that you know that are coming down the pipe. Let's listen. So, asked about Christine Lagarde and EU, the thing that stands out that's making him nervous, and he says himself, he's on a board of Green Foundation, bringing in green elements. But he is a money manager, and he says himself, it's a bit of a strange thing to do, to link climate change with monetary policy. Now, I did a series of tweets where I said this is absolutely absurd. How are principles of running an economy and money and the concept of why, what causes climate change, carbon in the air, not carbon in the air, how much of it, etc. Now, it is an exceedingly tenuous link, and the notion and the statements that Lagarde has made about ongoing continuous QE to fund green projects is actually politicizing entirely the green agenda and getting the financial system as tax, because quantitative easing is tax on you, it's devaluing your money and inflating it away, to fund it open-ended. And as someone who says he's a classic capitalist, and we'll come to this as well, because capitalism is being given, in my opinion, a bad name. It's price discovery through natural markets, through the laws of supply and demand and many other things. You'll hear his opinions there in a second. But I find it interesting that I'm glad that there's someone else that is not linking it. Of course, Bloomberg is running cover for Lagarde, so we don't get too much more sense out of them on that point. And then another little point from a link I'll copy again from our premium area, where we've just been sharing some weekend thoughts, not heavy trading related, but weekend thoughts about markets and what's going down and how it'll all play out. Here we go, and let's get to skip a little bit ahead and get to the part around and surrounding capitalism. So the key point I've made repeatedly about Trump is that he's made to be an antagonist. He's designed to be an antagonist. Everything about him is designed to be antagonistic. He is succeeding 100% in his role and goal of antagonizing. In other words, not only is he designed to be there, he's good at it. He's designed to be a boorish, bratish, aging dinosaur, white male conservative who says very unpolished, non-smart, almost ineloquent, dinosaur-based statements. And I've asserted many times the goal of the control structure is to kill many birds with one stone. Kill heterosexual white male conservatives as a concept outright, as being old school, bad and evil. Heterosexual white male conservatives. So if you're a Republican and by the way, I don't have a dog in either of the American politics fights. I don't vote conservative in the UK either. I'm talking about conservative moral standing, small government and family values and concepts like this. Conservative of morality and owning your own outcome and not being a victim. Those principles of get out there and do it, no one's going to do it for you, rather than the whole nannying welfare state by government. And so I want you to hear what he has to say also on capitalism, and I'm hoping this will play okay as well. So let's just hear Stanley Druckenmiller on capitalism and why I'm worried that actually the takedown of the overall market on a Trump presidency is designed to bury the likes of us, and the whiplash reaction is to bring in the absolute antithesis, which would be a female, someone like Warren, perfectly, a female supposed monopolist breaker-upper, student loan forgiver, complete quantitative easing, political, dole out the money, tax the billionaires. It sounds attractive, it's extremely ineffective, etc., etc. So let's hear that if we can.
Individual economic actors who pay those tariffs and who don't, depending on
winners and losers.
Exactly. It might as well be the Politburo. When you have monetary policy around the world with negative rates, and you cannot have capitalism.
Okay, this is slightly before the comment, a couple of seconds, but it's actually a separate, different point. You don't have capitalism right now, is the point he's making, because there is no risk-free rate of money. When you have such an extremity of negative interest rates, you have no basis on which to base a business on. A business that has risk must deliver a certain amount of extra alpha, in other words, return on investments, internal rate of return, things like this, weighted cost of capital, all your MBA, net present value, discounting of capital flows or profits that will come out of investing in this business, the risk of failure and unforeseen circumstances, all of these things. You need to base it against your risk-free rate, a completely phony and failed concept because there's nothing that's risk-free, but it used to be a T-bill bond, American T-bill bond. That interest rate that you got, instead of getting into a business, if you could get 5% on a T-bill, you didn't invest in a business that gave you a 5% return because one has much more risk than the other. The notion of risk-free rate is antiquated, and of course in this debt balloon where future debt jubilees are possible, or complete inflation and devaluation through inflation is likely. In fact, we have no benchmark for risk-free full stop at all. So I'm extending his point, but his point is about the fact that you can't have negative or near zero as a risk-free. It's not a real capitalistic situation. In other words, the cost of money has gone away. It's all destroying savers and investors for saving a debt-based economy in the fag end of its life. I'm talking fag as in butt of a cigarette, to be clear, at the absolute death knells of its overexpanded, highly extreme debt. And what he's saying is you don't have capitalism if you don't even have a semi-decent, respect-worthy hurdle rate on a T-bill, which represents the supposedly the low risk, let's avoid risk-free investment instead of an investment in a business. Now he'll go on to Donald Trump. Let's hear what he says there.
You don't have a hurdle rate for investment. So we don't really have the markets allocating capital the way they would under a capitalist model. That's another version of it. You know, it's funny because Trump, if Trump gets reelected and things implode in the second term,
yes,
capitalism will get a very bad name, in my opinion. and we'll probably have a big political response, but it will be under someone who's sort of the antithesis of capitalism.
Yes.
Then you've got the other side who want to villainize billionaires, which is okay. But their view is, if I take money away from this billionaire, that means the lower income levels are going to rise. Eric, that's not the way it works. That's like Trump's trade thing with a zero-sum game. If China loses, we win. No, you can both lose. It's the same thing with the economy. If you screw Jeff Bezos and he decides to take his entrepreneurship and go home, okay, this man has created 657,000 jobs if you take out the Whole Foods acquisition, all right? And, you know, all this innovation, all this stuff going on, and you reverse the economic wheel, we can both lose. Yeah, you can punish Jeff Bezos, but how do you really hurt the poor and the middle class? Bad economic policy. That's how you hurt them.
You hurt them through bad economic policy, but actually they don't want to save the poor. They want the poor to be dependent on government and entrench their existence. My one frustration with the very likable and humble, by the way, watch for an awesome trader how humble he is and admits he's wrong and he got that wrong. Meanwhile, he's killing it, making exceptional returns. Only he's slightly more conservative now that he's no longer competing, but watch his position. There's no big I am about him. But one thing that does frustrate me is they all put this down to incompetence. They don't see it as a potential aspect of design. It's an aspect of design to loathe and create absolute enmity. Never again a white male conservative after Bush and Trump. The two worst cases of examples that were caricatures, one designed to look totally dumb and out of his depth. The French don't have a word for entrepreneur. And the other one, probably as dumb, only more boorish, emotional, and toxic masculinity, if that's the new feminist phrase. You probably couldn't get a better example. And antagonizing and threatening and bull in a china shop type persona. He's absolutely playing a blinder for fulfilling that. And the goal is to create, people are personality orientated. People don't make rational decisions. Politics is a game of who people like, and policies that sound good and friendly and caring. How does he not see, and I wish he would potentially say, you would almost, even if he just showed that some sort of elements of, you kind of think they're setting up the big communist, the big watermelon communism. He's seen and he knows what Christine Lagarde has said as head of the entire Eurozone bloc. She's seen how the Bloomberg carries on and everybody carries on about greenism. He's trying to do his bit for supporting it. How does he not see that there's potentially a dark hand designing this blow up? You get the guy to fly the broken plane into the mountain and everyone else jumps out of the plane and gets ready to carry on with on the other side of the mountain range. And who do you get? You get a village idiot to do it, so that everyone can say he's the guy that crashed. Meanwhile, the plane was flawed from inception. It was a debt-based system that Greenspan hopelessly accelerated the expansion of debt with ridiculously low interest rates, for which we're still suffering from ridiculously low interest rates, but the debt is so big. We called long ago the turn on rates. That was something else that he said no one saw coming. We actually saw that coming because it's mathematically non-viable. So what's actually almost gives you a little bit of confidence is that as the minute you have some understanding of a conspiratorial narrative, you can open your mind to certain things being engineered that really good, probably substantially smarter than you, money managers just can't. In other words, it's orchestrated that way. How do you ensure someone never gets in again? You destroy the stereotype. You turn them into the biggest muppets and fools every time so that they say never again one of these, not for a generation. And then you get you set the tone for, well, it's time for something totally different. We just can't even go there anymore. Let's go right the other side, because then at least we guaranteed not getting what we've just had that was so loathsome. We can go have something equally loathsome and even more economically destructive on the other side. Not that the caricature of real capitalism even exists at present. So there is no real capitalism. This is a government-run economy. They used to talk about mixed economies, where there is a combination of government intervention. The Federal Reserve and the central bankers are creating unparalleled levels of liquidity and distorting all forms of price discovery in all markets, and causing utterly perverse valuations that you almost feel you need to chase. Ergo, the YouTube I recorded that ended up failing, and I'm going to have to do it again, on equity indices in the US and the ridiculous valuations, and why I think there's going to be a melt-up first where they go even higher at the current rate of repo rate liquidity provision by the Fed in this ridiculously low interest rate environment where there's supposedly no unemployment. It's ridiculously low, and we have record low rates. When you compare it to any other era, the rates should be substantially higher. But the reason they're not is because the banking system can't stand it. The interest bill on the accumulated debt can't be stood. You keep painting yourself into ever tighter corners, because unless you do a debt jubilee where you resign all the debt, you can't pay more than a certain amount of interest that will crowd out all other government investment has to make. Add to the fact, in 2018, both the Democrats got their welfare and social spending plans passed and agreed to allow the Republicans to have their expansion of the military-industrial complex, and it looks like there was a negotiation, and then in the end we finalized, okay, we don't really want you to have your defense, we don't want you to have your social spending plans. Okay, we'll meet in the middle. You have your defense as long as we have our social plan. Okay, oh well, isn't that good for the debt situation? So you have two parties in a phony, fake battle, but the game is just ever increasing the debt expansion, and it looks like it was hard haggled and negotiated, that they accelerated the rate of debt increase just because one is for one theme or flavor of politics and another is for another. They both are for breaking the system and expanding the debt-based cartel. In fact, conservatism used to be always about running tight ship and good accounting on debt and your financial situation, where Democrats or Labour were about spendthrift nature. So that doesn't even hold anymore. It doesn't matter which clowns you have in, blue or red. The game is the same. They're going to break the system by expanding the debt pile. They've already so far into the end of this game that you can never have normal monetary interest rates policy ever again, for which by Mr. Druckenmiller's own definition is not capitalism at the moment. And when they crash this whole system that is not capitalism, they will blame capitalism so that they can get their all more autocratic surveillance state, green watermelon, super taxation, communism, Bolshevik, Zionist communism in power, and you will be controlled, told, and the weak will be given their UBI, and everyone will be taxed on their carbon, and if you don't do green this, and certain investments will get beneficial rates to have investment money, all controlled by government quangos and friends of the business, and all other businesses operated will have to pay for them because they're not advancing the green cause. And that's how you introduce a whole swathe of new taxes on corporations, individuals, and you reduce people's activity, you control what they're allowed to do, and you clamp down further in this surveillance state that we are running. And why do not more people actually see the overall macro-arching geopolitical ground that is seeing a bunch of central banks, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, and Garde all come out within half an hour of each other on literally the same day, and one the day after, all making these mega green commitments to monetary policy. It's kind of like me saying, we should plant more apple trees because Mars is getting close to Earth. The two are totally uncorrelated, have nothing to do with each other, and it is an agenda that is being driven. Monetary policy and running a good economy has virtually nothing. Yes, stop polluters from externalities and spoiling rivers that doesn't involve you doing watermelon green communism. Anyway, such is my rant. That is the video. That is Stanley confirming and wondering and worrying about something that I've seen as one of my primary scenario casts for reset. They intend to bring it down on Trump. It has to do with my understanding of trying to get a understanding of timing of this great crash that they intend to do. They want to kill many a bird with a single shot. And they will kill heterosexual, white, conservative males as leaders. They're under attack in every other format. They're going to bring in their communism and green communism with it, and they will reset debt, and they will bring in UBI, and who knows what other currencies will come. Anyway, let me leave it at that. Thanks for checking in. Enjoy your weekends, and I'll catch up with you later.